As a freshman in high school, CJ McCollum was a mere 5'2", the shortest player on his team and one of the shortest of his grade. At that height, despite his work ethic, there was no possible way he could make it to the NBA, and thus nobody paid attention to him. That would soon change though. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, let's take a look at CJ McCollum's improbable journey to the NBA, and how his story was so drastically different than any of his peers. Yet, he turned out pretty freaking good. Probably the third best player of the 2013 draft, I think. Alright, let's get started. So, continuing what I was talking about earlier, McCollum was not on anyone's radar for most of high school. He was fortunate enough to go through a massive growth spurt, growing about a foot in 3 years, eventually reaching his final height of 6'3". McCollum experienced a high level of success in high school after this growth spurt. We saw him set state records and county records in scoring, going from an absolute nobody to averaging nearly 30 points per game in his senior season. Despite this, there was still a ton of questions surrounding him. How good was he actually? The county he played in wasn't exactly the most competitive. McCollum emphasized that he had a lot of stuff he needed to work on. His jump shot, which has become the most defining factor of his NBA career, wasn't always this smooth. This was an area of his game that he continued to work on, but perhaps his short stature in his younger days provided an advantage. When he learned to shoot, he had to practice a quick high release, just to get the ball over his defenders, to not get blocked. And over the years, as he grew taller, McCollum refined and perfected his jumper to suit his new height. He finished his career at Glen Oak High School with more points scored than any other previous player. Despite his accomplishments and ridiculous growth, McCollum still did not garner much attention. Colleges didn't see him as having NBA potential. While he did grow substantially, McCollum was still very thin, hovering around 160 pounds. His body has not yet caught up to his height, and it would take a few years for him to fill out his frame and put on some extra muscle. Which he absolutely did. Reportedly, in his 4 years in college, he put up roughly 30 pounds of muscle, going up to 190. So anyway, before college though, he was rated as a 3-star prospect. He wasn't even ranked on numerous recruiting pages, like Scout or Rivals. They didn't even think he was relevant enough to warrant a scouting report. And that created a chip on his shoulder. McCollum set out to prove them wrong. He chose to attend Lehigh, a great school without a doubt, still a Division I school, although their basketball program is not in the same tier compared to, like, Duke or Kentucky. In fact, when he first arrived at Lehigh, his teammate Gabe Knutson noticed, "He's a guy who just wants to be in the gym and draws people into the gym." That was my first impression. He was skinny though. You can quote me on that. He was skinny. He was like 160, like 165. He was a rail. But what stood out to Knutson was something that McCollum told him way back when they were both freshmen. "We know that he's the guy that's worked out the most, hitting the most shots. Yeah, he could take bad shots here or there, but when he said to me specifically and to other teammates, 'I'm not going to pass you the ball because you don't stay after practice and shoot as much as me. I would rather take a contested shot because I've worked on it more than you have.'" When you hear that, you're kind of like, oh shit. It was an interesting style of leadership, but this is what the Lehigh basketball team needed. McCollum, even at that age, was seeping confidence. Even as a freshman, he immediately became the leader of the team, and he led by example. It was here where he cemented himself as an NBA caliber prospect. In 4 years there, McCollum led the team in scoring every single season, always hovering around 20 points per game. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks would be relevant for the first time in a long while. A notable achievement during the McCollum saga included an upset victory against Duke, knocking them out in the first round of the NCAA tournament in 2012. That was the first game that drew national attention for McCollum and Lehigh basketball, and a huge factor for his skyrocketing draft stock. In this day and age, it's rare to see a player stay in college for all 4 seasons. Most players just leave after their first or second year. but he felt like he needed that time to develop his body and hopefully get into NBA condition. His efforts paid off. The 2013 NBA draft class was memorable for two specific players: Anthony Bennett getting drafted first overall and becoming the biggest bust the league has ever seen. It was also memorable for Giannis, the 15th pick of the draft, who developed into by far the best player of this class. You also had Gobert down the board as well, but for the most part, a lot of high draft picks were very underwhelming. I'm talking about guys like Nerlens Noel, or Cody Zeller, or Alex Len, Ben McLemore. McCollum was chosen by the Blazers with the 10th pick. When he got drafted, a milestone was achieved. He became the first player in NBA history to get drafted out of Lehigh University. Not only that, but to get drafted this high, it was more than he had ever hoped to accomplish. Unlike most athletes, McCollum used those 4 years in college very wisely. He took his courses seriously and majored in journalism, thinking that if he didn't make the NBA, he would try to become a sports analyst. He had this level of professionalism unseen from most rookies. He was business savvy. He knew how to interact with the media. A true professional at the age of 22. At first, critics questioned the Blazers' decision to draft him, not because he was a bad player, but because a wing player, especially an undersized shooting guard, was something that they did not need. They already had Nick Batum and Wes Matthews, both of whom were pretty young and very capable starters. The other question was, can he really play alongside Damian Lillard in the starting lineup? I mean, if you're gonna use the 10th pick to draft somebody, he should eventually be a starter, right? For McCollum and Lillard, their skill sets were strikingly similar, and defensively, it was both of their weaknesses. At least with Batum and Matthews there, they can help cover Lillard, as they're both bigger and longer and more capable defenders. But could a Lillard-McCollum backcourt really work out? That was a dilemma that a lot of fans, a lot of analysts talked about over the years, especially the first few years when McCollum was still a bench player. Eventually, Batum and Matthews would be gone, and McCollum worked his way into the starting lineup. The discussions went on for years and years. Every time the Blazers did something well, everyone praised how explosive and dynamic their backcourt is. Like, oh my god, they gotta be one of the best backcourt duos in the league. But then, every time they got bounced early in the playoffs, it was always, oh my god, they gotta blow it up. This backcourt is too small to defend anybody. This basically went on for every single season. You had doubters saying all kinds of stuff like that. Regardless, ever since the Blazers drafted McCollum, they've made the playoffs every single year. Through that time, he adapted and adjusted his game. Previously known for shooting a lot of mid-range shots and being very good at it too, he started moving out further to the three-point line. This was huge for his efficiency, and once he started to take more threes, his game opened up so much more. McCollum has had a unique journey getting here, and at times, the path was rough. There were so many instances throughout his life when people doubted him, even the people closest to him. He vividly remembers a conversation he had with his middle school teacher. Quote, "I'll never forget her telling me the chances of making it as a professional athlete were very slim. She gave me the percentages, she gave me the breakdown. I used to say to her, one day you're going to be begging me to come back and speak to the kids. Now we fast forward and I talk to the kids." McCollum was always a late bloomer, being just 4'8" in 8th grade while his peers towered over him. Of course, his chances of making the NBA were obviously very slim at that point. Nowadays, he does in fact go back to his former schools, including Lehigh, to give speeches and talk to young athletes looking to pursue their NBA career, and telling them to ignore the doubters like he did, especially if they're undersized. It turned out well for CJ, although not everyone will get that kind of growth spurt. Anyway, that's all folks. CJ's rise to the NBA landscape was nothing short of amazing. Once a completely unknown player, he revitalized basketball at Lehigh. Going from unrecognized to a top 10 pick is extraordinary. Let me know your thoughts on CJ. Do you foresee him making the All-Star team soon? I mean, he's certainly an All-Star caliber player. It's just, the Western Conference is so stacked with guards, it's been hard for him to make it. Thank you all so much for watching, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.